Did Donald Trump get exactly what he wanted? Delay is his best defense.
Not yet, Stephanie. I think that he's headed on the path that he would like, but I think ultimately what we're going to see here is that that's going to have a very quick and short end. And when I say that, what I'm referring to is the fact that while these things are delayed, the prosecutions are moving forward. So expect that Donald Trump is going to at some point move forward with a motion to dismiss along a stronger grounds around election interference, because he's going from being the presumptive nominee to at that point he will have the delegates necessary to claim the Republican nomination. And so he's going to try and delay this even further, but it's still going to move forward. We heard from Merrick Garland last week where he talked about the fact that no, the Department of Justice typically does not prosecute cases within a certain time frame before an election, but that doesn't apply here because these cases are already going. So I do suspect that he's feeling pretty good right now about the fact that he staved this off, but we have not seen the last of these cases going forward, nor have we seen the last of his legal maneuvers in trying to get these cases dismissed.
On the Fani Willis news, it does not mean that her case against Donald Trump should be thrown out. But in terms of public opinion, how bad is this for her? It's not good. I think that where you started is exactly right, Stephanie. It's important to understand that whatever is going on with Fani Willis in terms of her personal life and her decisions as the lead prosecutor in Fulton County do not have anything to do with Donald Trump's guilt or innocence with respect to the 19 co-defendants as part of this RICO case. And that's important for viewers to understand. What is happening here, to your question, and it's very important to point out, is that they are trying to sully the reputation of that office and the reputation of her as the lead prosecutor in such a way that you can expect to see repeated attacks on her character and her decision-making going forward in such a way that they are hoping that they may be able to get one holdout on that jury who is unable to convict Donald Trump. So this is really a strategy that is throwing whatever they can against the wall and hoping that it sticks. It's not the best news for Fani Willis, but it is certainly not a nail in the coffin. Charles, let's go long before a jury is even seated. This case is time sensitive, and the scrutiny she is going to be under, the hearings that are going to ensue, they could hugely delay this whole thing. So for the sake of time, should she consider stepping down and taking herself out of the narrative, or will that open a whole new can of worms?
It opens a whole new can of worms, and I don't think that that's a good idea. I think that ultimately, because her office is the one that conducted the investigation, even if she removes herself from that, it's going to create more of a cloud of doubt around everything that is being used to prosecute Donald Trump. And so that is not going to be a good move. Please remember, when I first started talking about all of these cases, I told on your show, America, that they were going to get an up-close front row seat and all of the different ways that lawyers can use maneuvers to try and work the legal system. And that's what's happening. That's what we're seeing Donald Trump's defense team do. I don't think that Fani Willis needs to step down. I think it creates more problems than it solves. Ultimately, this is something that they will have to deal with. But if she stays the course, I do think she will be able to effectively prosecute this case.
When you look at where all of these legal situations stand, have people been relying too much on the legal system to decide whether or not Donald Trump will be the Republican nominee?
I think it's played too much of a factor, and I'm glad you asked that question. I think that ultimately people have had sort of this wait-and-see mentality around Donald Trump when, quite frankly, the evidence is there and you can make the decision for yourself. And that's whether you're talking about the court of public opinion as a person who is voting, or whether you are talking about the actual legal court of law when you're thinking about whether Donald Trump should, in fact, be held accountable criminally for the things he's done. And so ultimately, look at what you know, look at the facts as they are coming out, and make a decision. Waiting for a conviction or an acquittal in a case like this in order to make a determination as to whether you think this man is fit to be the next president of the United States of America is a huge mistake.